Present my work in such a beautiful university and to this great audience, so thank you again. And first I apologize for my English because it's very Italian, and every time I go abroad I realize that I have to improve it, but I realize it always when I'm already on the stage, so it's always too late, so I'm sorry. If I won't be clear, please just stop me and I will try to explain myself better. So I will start spending a few words introducing myself. As Mark said, I'm a PhD student at LUMSA University of Rome. I graduated almost 3 years ago in corporate communication, and then I started working for a company as a marketing assistant. But then I quit that job because I won the scholarship for doing the PhD, and I would like to focus on my career as PhD student. So my PhD thesis is going to be on social impact assessment and within the field of social entrepreneurship. So the work I'm going to present today is my first publication and is about measurement of value creation and social impact assessment models. That means which tools have social entrepreneurs to really understand the extent to which they are fulfilling their social mission. So how can they be really sure that they are really achieving a social mission, that they are really having an impact on society? So during my presentation, I will start defining my research objective and the reasons why I choose it. And then I will go to a brief description of the theoretical overview of the research paths I investigated. So the social entrepreneurship, social impact assessment, and the classification of models. Then I will illustrate the applied methodology and the main findings. And I will conclude with the discussion of conclusion and managerial implication of my work, and also with the mention of the limitation of this work and the future research agenda. So the objective of my work, the main purpose, was the creation of a taxonomy of existing social impact assessment models. This is because the social impact assessment is today a hot topic, and there is gaining a lot of interest among academics and also among managers. So I'm sorry. So, okay, it's becoming even more relevant, and it's true, especially for those organizations like social enterprises that have a social mission as a key feature of their work. So social entrepreneurs have to be really sure about the fulfillment of the social mission and about the extent to which they are really having an impact on society with their activities. Otherwise, how could they say that they are social entrepreneurs? How could they say that they are having a social mission? So this topic is very important, especially for them. And given this importance, many models were developed to assess social impact. But they are different in purposes, in perspective, and in focuses. So I thought that a classification could be a useful starting point for entrepreneurs to address the landscape of existing models. And so consequently, it could be useful also for enhance the practice of social impact assessment. So the third research paths I investigated for writing my work were social entrepreneurship, social impact assessment, and the classification of social impact assessment models. What about social entrepreneurship? Well, it's of course a global phenomenon, and its increasing importance is evidenced by the growing number of publications on this topic. So just for give you an example, I would like to show you something about the Italian situation. As you can see, the official report on social enterprises used to divide it the real social enterprises and the potential one. So in the first group, we found that those organizations that are officially registered as social enterprises according to the law, but also companies that are labeled social enterprises even if they are not registered in this official register, and also social cooperatives that are quite common in Italy, and they meet some requirements, the same one that are for social enterprises, so they were counted as social enterprises as well. In the second group, we found all those non-profit organizations, but also for-profit one, that work in those interesting sectors that are identified by the law, and so they were also counted as social enterprises. This is to say that the phenomenon of social enterprises and social entrepreneurship is very important, but most of all, it includes a lot of different kinds of organizations. And this is evidenced also by literature on this topic, because we found a lot of different perspectives on how to define social enterprises. But along this different kind of organizations, we can see that the social value, the creation of social value, is one of the key features and is common among all of them. And so this leads to consider the social impact assessment topic even more important for this organization, of course. So talking about impact assessment, we should mention the blended value proposition coined by Emerson in 2003. As he said, this can be considered one of the mainstay of existing literature on the topic. And as he said, organization must move beyond the traditional belief that economic value is separated and in conflict with the environmental one and the social one, because those are equally important and there is a dynamic interplay between them. So they have to be understood and assessed together. Okay, so social impact have different meanings in literature, and we refer to it as the creation of direct and indirect changes that organizations' activities have and on anyone that in some way is affected by their activities. In particular, according to the impact value chain developed by Clark, or described by Clark in 2004, we can say that the impact is the portion of outcomes that happened because organizations' activities above and beyond what would have happened anyway. So given the importance of social impact, we have to understand, the need is to understand how it could be fully assessed. And so the topic of social impact assessment is really relevant and is intended as the process of measuring the impact that organizations create during their activities, with their activities on the surrounding community. And studying the literature, we can say we found out that there are two main trends in studies on social impact assessment. First, there are many contributions that are aimed at developing and analyzing social impact assessment models. Second, we find also some contribution, it's a smaller group, but there are some contributions that are aimed at classifying and evaluate these models. And this is the third research path I focused on. So classification of models, I selected 8 main classification systems. As you can see, they identify the criteria that are partially convergent, but they are quite different. For example, we can see the one developed by Nichols in 2005. It's quite simple because it divided models on the basis of the qualitative or quantitative data that are required for the analysis. Or, for example, we have the one developed by Maas and Lickett in 2011, and they found 4 variables and 17 sub-variables, so this is a more complex model. As we can see, of course, these classification systems are very useful, but none of them lead to the identification of macro categories that could be really useful for social entrepreneurs to choose the most suitable model according to the needs of their organization. And this is the gap I've tried to fill with my work. So starting from these premises, as I say, the objective was the development of a taxonomy of social impact assessment models that could be useful for social enterprises. The methodology I follow, okay, I will start creating a database and then I select my sample. I choose variables for developing the cluster analysis, and then I develop a hierarchical cluster analysis, and this led me to some results. What about the methodology? Okay, I did first research on 2 international databases that are EBSCO and Google Scholar, and I looked for articles that have in the abstract or in the full text the keywords social impact and measurement, social impact and assessment, and social impact and tool. And 139 articles were selected, and from those, 27 models were selected. Articles and models were selected excluding those models that were not considered to be consistent with the research purposes. And then we integrated these models with the results of a further analysis on 2 other international databases, and 62 models were selected. So I merged these results together, I deleted the duplicates, and I have my sample of 76 models for assessing social impact. And this was the basis for the development of the hierarchical cluster analysis. Okay, for developing the cluster analysis, I choose some, I'm sorry, I keep on saying we, but it was me. I choose some variables, and I choose them according to two criteria. First, the frequency with which they were used in the previous work on classification, and second, the availability of information required for analyzing the model. So the variables I chose were the typology of data, the typology of impact, the purpose of the model, their complexity, the sector, the time frame of the analysis, and the typology of the organization who developed it. And this is what came out from the cluster analysis. This allows the identification of 4 clusters, and I choose the 4 cluster solution according to the size and interpretability of each clusters, and of course according to the level of significance of each of them. So this cluster analysis allows that once we have the clusters, I do a deeper analysis of each of them to be able to have a kind of a descriptive profile of each cluster. And so in the next slide, I will illustrate you very briefly these clusters by underlining the most important features that could really distinguish each of them by the other. So for example, cluster 1, we call it simple social quantitative, and it's the 14.5% of the sample. The models within this cluster have mainly quantitative data, and they assess the impact on society and on people. And those are simple models, so that the level complexity is very low. The sector is general, and the time frame for the analysis is retrospective. Cluster 2, we call it holistic complex, and it's the 26.3% of the cluster. They have an holistic approach to impact assessment, and the purpose is most of all the assessment, but also the reporting of information. They are quite complex, they are general sector, and the time frame of the analysis is ongoing and or retrospective, and they are developed most of all by a non-profit network. Cluster 3, we call it qualitative screening, and it's the 40.8% of the cluster. The data typology required is mainly qualitative, and that's the reason why the complexity is not that high. They also have an holistic approach to impact assessment, and they are sector-specific, and the time frame for the analysis is retrospective. Finally, cluster 4, we call it management, and it's the 18.4% of the sample. The purpose of these models is most of all the management and the certification, so the obtainment of an external certification. The sector is general, and the time frame for the analysis is ongoing, and they were developed most of all by consulting firms and by institutions. So what we can say about the clusters I identified and the description of their profile is that it could be useful for social entrepreneurs to have a global vision on the existing models for assessing their social impact, but also to have help in choosing the most suitable one according to the needs of the organization. And this could be useful also for public institutions that have recently started to be interested in impact assessment models, because they start to use them for choosing the project to evaluate, to fund, and also to monitor the already funded one. So it could be useful for them as well. Of course, this work has some limitations. First, the sample, because I analyzed a wide sample of models, but not a complete one. And so this could be a limitation of my work. And then also the analysis I used may offer some discretion, because I choose the solution with 4 cluster, but I can choose also other kind of solutions, so there is a little bit of discretion in this choose. So what about future avenues for research? Of course, this is a first step. I would like to, starting from this, I would like to understand which are the real purposes and needs that social enterprises have in approaching the social impact assessment. And I would like to refer to Italian realities, because I know that in Italy the practice of social impact assessment is not widespread. So I would like to understand if it's due to lack of knowledge about the models, how social entrepreneurs really perceive these models, if they think that they are too complicated to apply, or if they are maybe too time consuming or resource consuming. I would like to understand if they know about the existence of their models and if they really use them, if these models can be useful in fulfill the needs that social enterprises have in assessing their social impact. So this is of course the first step, but I'm going to work a lot. And so this is how my work has been developed. So thank you for your attention and again for this opportunity. Thanks.